Well, I'm not thinking of an existence where there is no attachment, no inclination. I'm not thinking of a reality in which there is a completeness, a oneness, a finality, a whole, a conceived of ultimate state. Life, practical life as we might think of it, the life we have in this world, is of desires and purposes, achievements and failures, and we value it. We value it greatly. We would like eternal life, and we would like such life to be better and better. And it is one of creativity. If such as this experience is here did not exist, then we would have no life. And we wouldn't even be considering the question now, discussing it and reflecting upon it. So creativity, the coming into being of something that we value, is fundamental to us. And our ideal is therefore, in some sense, more and better of such, longer, larger, greater. Our God is not bound by a specific achieved all situation. He is ever creating, ever developing, ever expanding, so to speak, ever more complex, ever more varied, revisions and changes and accelerating change and so forth. Life in a fullness that's not even comprehended yet, but that can come about and does. So we're thinking then of life eternal in terms of the little story we're experiencing here. But this is, of course, in a specified number of dimensions that are in a certain way with each other, and our relationship to it, and what we perceive. But life eternal is to know God. It's not that this is some conventional reality. This is the reality that we are dealing with. Perhaps in other dimensions, reality therefore presents us differently, and perhaps beyond it, there is something that makes or causes things to be. That's put a bit impersonally, isn't it? To personify it, I think we're saying creator or creative intention. Something, there's a causal there's something that causes things to be. And the to be, the being, is somewhat as we've defined it in our thinking. And perhaps there are many ways of being. And even different causes of such. But there's, in a sense, unlimited creation in any set of dimensions, like this one that we're in. You know, the planet could be more sophisticated, and more planets could be like this, or different, or varied, and linked, and affecting each other, and one could have a conceived of consciousness that experienced more and more of such variety and interest. Now, the whole of reality may be more thought than anything else, and we would therefore, to know God would be to enter into the thought. Now, I don't mean I know what is true. I surmise what might be true. And from that interesting conjecture, I discern what may be most helpful and useful in the little situation of living that I have. So I anticipate that there is a creator in a sense, that it is a person, not an inanimate object that I can't relate to as a person. And I assume this person has certain needs, and from that I am encouraged or discouraged. I personally am encouraged. Some people dream up such a frightening God, they're discouraged by the whole business. But I'm encouraged to try out and follow certain principles in living, have certain values, and I may or may not find such, if you like, bring reward, bring happiness, bring a feeling of that was the right thing to do, that worked out well. I minister to someone, I pray for them, I kneel before them, and they're in tears and they're moved, and they go away lifted, able to cope. They live better because of my ministry. I could in all humility say, the ministry of God through me and so on, but I'm not really interested in that. What I am interested in is I bring relief, I bring a cure, if you like, I bring a rescue. They feel they're rescued, they go away happier, more fulfilled, more sure, more competent, more able to live and to not just be in a heap of fear and concern and worry and distress. Have I therefore taken hold of something of the truth? I don't know. What I have done though is I've taken hold of something that works in the sense of brings in the things that we value: happiness, joy, relief, perhaps healing, optimism, hope, peace, you name it. And features of personality that we find such a blessing, so harmonious, such as constancy, integrity, honesty, good intention, kindness, faith, hope, So, in some sense, I've stumbled upon truth defined in that way, defined in something that brings joy, peace, the things that we seem to value. Have I got it right that there's a creator called God who it's best to understand him as Father? Oh, definitely. Best to understand him as Father. I've found that seems to work better than anything else. I'm not being sexist here. I just mean, or at least I'm not interested in whether it's sexist or not. I'm just interested in what works. Am I wrong, in fact, there isn't this personal God, or is a vast plurality of beings that are working incredibly well with each other, or what have you? It doesn't really matter which is true. At the level at which I'm living, which is I'm simply fumbling around to find basic things that make life considerably better than what people might otherwise be experiencing. And certainly it will be refined so that things are better still. There's other understandings that are more advanced, if you like, or more appropriate to experience of such achievement as we might gain now. A bit like the theory that, you had to go through a period of socialism before you could really embrace an understanding and appreciation of the carrying out of communism. That, it's one step at a time. But it is one step, and a necessary step. There might be a variety of ways of getting to where we could go, and all of them, or many of them, very good, very acceptable to us, at least from our present perspective, and as we continue on the journey to whichever goal one might move towards. So I'm not thinking of revealing truth, conventional truth or absolute truth. I'm simply tracking down what works. And by works I mean seems to result in that which we value. And sure, it is the avoidance of pain and suffering. But I'm certainly not going to not pursue such. I would pursue the avoidance of pain and suffering, and I don't think it's by simply controlling the mind to, say it likes bitter things, or it doesn't care whether the thing is bitter or sweet. It's irrelevant. That's a negation of life. I'm not here to forget about the past and ignore the future, because that seems to result in a great deal of destruction and annihilation. The dream that can't be remembered, it's as if it never happened, except it was good or bad at the time. And sure, I'm not wondering or worrying about it now, but I haven't learned anything from it either. So I must remember the joy and the sorrow, so that I am better equipped to know the consequences of certain actions, and therefore choose actions that are likely to be happier outcome from my perspective and my ongoing changing perspective. So, life eternal is the goal, upgrade of life as we know it. Eternally trying to find the upgrade, the improvement, the betterment. Now, that is found to be reliant in part, at least, on a cooperation with other people who are pursuing similar goals. Not with someone who's seeking annihilation or complete blank of mind that's neither happy nor unhappy. We're seeking a cooperation with people of similar sort of values and inclinations in order to achieve what we value and are inclined to do. So, a cooperation with others, especially others of like mind, is absolutely crucial. In fact, one of the fundamentals is that they are of like mind, like values and so on. Else we have such conflict that we're simply destroying what we value. So you see this, don't you, in that we have a common culture, say, in some countries that are not too cosmopolitan. And even those that do, they move towards a common culture that they might call politically acceptable culture. And that's because to achieve these goals, we're better positioned, it seems, if we are cooperating, concerned for each other's welfare and well-being. We're concerned too for those that cut across the goals we have and would destroy it. And we don't like zero-sum games, where my gain is your loss. That seems to go against we want a situation increasingly where your gain is my gain. We both gain by this, which is what trade is meant to be, isn't it? I trade if free, assuming it's free. I'm free to do so. I trade because I gain something from the trade, and you trade with me because you also gain. You needed the money, the profit, and I needed the goods you were selling, something like that. So there's it's in a case where there's an individuality that's found a mechanism whereby nonetheless there can be a cooperation to bless both. And the blessing of both seems to come back on us in that we then live in a society that has tremendously more potential to bring in what we value. So, if we think of Christianity, we're talking about life eternal. We're thinking that we value life. We want more of it, not less, not some annihilation of it, not some dramatic reinterpretation of it, unless it's really does bring a tremendous blessing from our present point of view. But it has to be from our present point of view for us to want to move towards it. Otherwise, we might take it that, hang on a sec, that cooperation will simply result in like our annihilation, not bring about what we value at all. So we choose good company. Basic of certainly Christian spiritual understanding is that choose good company. If you choose bad company, well, you're affected by it. And in fact, for instance, the Western view of Hinduism and so on, again, as in the Ananda organization, Paramhansa Yogananda, your company is more important than your practice, because your practice becomes decimated in the wrong company. So in the extreme, you've got the individual pulling away from all the world. If all the world was going the wrong way, goes and lives in a cave in the Himalayas. There are so many pitfalls to this solution, though, that the more modest approach, which is simply to choose the best company that's available rather than no company at all, in large measure is a great benefit, with perhaps times of seclusion where you sort things out on your own and then come back into the world and have a re-look and see what works and what doesn't. So a modern religion is not one of great theorizing as to what is, but only imagining what could be, and therefore what rules or policy is then best to follow, if such were the case, and seeing, in a sense, if it works. In that sense, it's quite scientific. We say, well, if God is a person, he's a father, and he's created all things, then he's concerned for all life. We should be concerned for all life. So that's sort of, does this work? Well, we bounce back and find, in what way should I be concerned for all life? Should I be preserving, the tiger that's about to eat me? Possibly not. No, let's be a bit more practical about the consequences of such a theory. It seems to result in an awful lot of, well, my death in particular. So you don't need to be some great logician to do it. You just need to be earnest in seeing what works and what doesn't, what you think is reasonable from your, limited experience of the world. And you can get more experience in the world by listening to what other people think from their experience, so that you actually gain a wider perspective. And that will enrich the possibilities from which you can choose to see what does fit. And it'll be what fits from your perspective. It'll be your view of other people's view and so on, I mean, there's no harm in sort of, thinking, well, for instance, another principle that perhaps there's reincarnation. If there is, what would be the consequence? Does this affect how I should live in my daily life? Well, it might make a lot of difference if I think, it's a big improvement on once dead, you're forever dead, isn't it? In that it's a big improvement as regards hope and meaning to life and so on. If the whole of the universe is simply going to wind up at some point anyway, and there's then nothing from then on, well, you'd still be left with its fun in the meantime, but, it could be, and perhaps we can make the meantime happier. But there's something depressing about such a long-run view. I mean, our long-run view of hope is that things are eternal in some sense. Not that they're eternally the same, of course. That could be dreadful, boring and awful and anything but life. But eternally varied and changing. In other words, the fact that things come and are and then pass away is not in itself upsetting, because other things come and are and pass away, which are equally nice, I mean, the first wife was good, and then it passed away. Well, that was tricky, but not so tricky if I had realized or had lived in the firm hope that the next wife was coming, and they were, and she was lovely and loved me, and I loved her, and that was wonderful, and that passed away. But even that wasn't such a terrible tragedy if one re-looks at it, because something wonderful was coming, another lady that loved me, and equally, that came to an end. But do you see, there's you have a nice meal. That doesn't mean to say you won't enjoy the meal tomorrow. It's not the fact that I can't enjoy another meal now means, in the very immediate now, means that I need to be all sorrowful and unhappy, because things can be lovelier still. I can make a better meal tomorrow, I mean, if we're confronted by the obvious that, most creatures that we know of and plants and so on seem to die at some point, and we will as well. Well, perhaps the hope, the understanding that there is a heaven, or there is a God, or there is reincarnation. Oh, of course, not only a God, but a benevolent one, and powerful enough to sustain us in other worlds, heavens, and so on. And we find that belief, if you like, that adoption of that particular view is a great blessing to us. It gives us meaning to life, and we're much happier individuals because of it, more able to continue living without committing suicide or something in utter depression and despair. Then, well, I don't care if it's truth or not, it seems to work. It works. And in the end, we're not interested in truth. We're interested in what works. It's like with my fruitarian diet, isn't it? I say, well, I can't give you the explanation as to why it works. But if you follow it, for me, it's given me incredible health and fitness and resilience to illness and so forth. It might not for you, but my goodness, it might, mightn't it? It looks more likely, given it has for me, and nobody else seems to seriously try it. I don't need to find out in itself. The big gain is doing it and finding it works. Why it works is almost noise by comparison, just trivia. It works. I've found the cure. I don't know why it works yet. Well, that's fascinating. Let's think about it. Is it that I'm that the daily requirements of various nutritions are absolutely up the wall and they're wrong, or they are for certain circumstances. This is interesting. Let's have a look at it. But don't ignore, whilst you're fiddling about doing that, the big reality that's staring you in the face. It works. It works for some. It has worked. You know that it's, and that's really the scientific mind, isn't it? Says, does this work? Why does it work? That's interesting. But it works. We know that does so-and-so. I can rely on that. And then suddenly you find, oh, you can't rely on it. Now and again it doesn't work. Oh, now, why doesn't it work then and does work then? There, and you start to come up with a theory as to what's going on behind the scenes, or that will explain why it works in one case and why it doesn't work in another. And you move forward. And that is the scientific mind. So we have a scientific religion in that sense. We don't have a purely philosophical religion, one with a fantastic theology that doesn't seem to particularly make people happier or unhappier. Then we start to think, oh, we're on the wrong track. There may be all sorts of logic and reasoning and great treatises as to why this is right, but we're on the wrong track. People are not getting happier. They're not finding ways to live better. We've got it wrong. And how do we know we got it wrong? Because it's not bringing the happiness we want. It's wrong in those terms. It's a very erudite theory, very consistent, based on all sorts of acceptable premises, but it is not bringing in the goods. We are not happier by it. We are not progressing. We're ending up, say, with wars and famine and collapse of our society and so forth. So you say, this belief system's not doing us any good. It's not valid. Whether it's true or not is irrelevant. It's not valid in that it's not valid in the way that we wish it to be valid, namely that we have life more abundantly, more joy, more peace, more hope, more fulfillment, more goodness, more continuity, more expansion of life. I'm come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. Do you see? That's what we're at. And that's the religion we're embracing. And, you can pick up on many of the past religions and see which parts seem to really work. Don't deny it. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, you know. I mean, Buddha threw out the religiosity, perhaps, of Hinduism and gleaned something from it that was of value and found something else to it and emphasized, you know, certain ways of looking at things. And that was a blessing. Probably went astray after a few hundred years with various different interpretations and confusions and different strands of the same sort of, from the same original idea and so on. But modern religion then has to always be, where are we now? What seems to work best? Rather than some incredible analysis of the philosophy or the theology, the reasoning behind it. Much more analysis of the data that keeps coming in. What are we worried about in the world? Are we finding ways of overcoming, in the case of the 21st century, different types of disease and loneliness, isolation, wars of a different character? Are we managing the obvious one, isn't it, our technology in a way that it's going to be a continual blessing, or is it looking pretty dangerous? What beliefs, if you like, chosen safeguard us in our new situation? And the situation's always new in some way, isn't it? And therefore we're always upgrading, not saying this was right 2,000 years ago, so it's absolutely dead right now. It probably wasn't right 2,000 years ago. It's a bit of a fiction, and it was only right in some ways, and some of those ways may not be too appropriate to what we're wrestling with now, or not a priority compared to what we're wrestling with now. So life demands a great flexibility, and in fact that is part of the great richness of life, isn't it? This variety and flexibility to adjust. And the businessman in his way knows this, doesn't he? He starts off thinking he's going to sell jeans, and he ends up selling waistcoats and rugs and soft toys, because that's where the market happened to be, and he was the right person at the right time to take advantage of the openings that he saw. And that's what you've got to be in living. And that's the problem with bureaucracies. I don't mean that we're not incredibly blessed by having bureaucracies, because how else do you control things? And that's the way organisations work. They have to have some sort of bureaucracy, don't they? But it is the problem with them in that they are inherently rigid. They're inherently very difficult to reform and upgrade and adjust to the changing circumstance. They are designed to fit a certain state of reality, and reality is always changing, or at least our perception of it is, and therefore we have a great need for our bureaucracies to be flexible, which in large measure they're not. They're not very flexible. It's very hard to keep up with change. And religions are, of course, some sort of crystallized form of that problem, aren't they, where well, it was good then by the great master who brought it, and it must be good today, even though we're looking at slavery and we think surely that's ghastly. We're not going to give a nod to that, and we're looking at certain roles of male and female, and we think, oh, that's just unacceptable now. That's all there is to it. I mean, there are some things we probably are still absolutely vital. I suspect the family unit is one of those. The family is the best way of bringing up children to be what we want. Hitler and a few other people have tried, well, all of us have tried controlling the upbringing and the education system of a nation's children, and it's had plus and minus results, isn't it? I mean, yep. So enough of that. Thank you, Heavenly Father. But to say definitely that we are not wedded to some simple intellectual rationality of logic applied to premises that are unchanging. The premises are changing because the things that we're really interested in are to do with life in the present that we're in and in the experience that we're in. And it's finding solutions to that, many of which may be the same as they've been for thousands of years, but some won't be. And some we definitely got wrong, and we didn't progress anything like as far perhaps as we could have done. And it's important to us, given what we value, that we're therefore extremely flexible, adaptable, reflective in knowing what worked and what didn't, and in what circumstances, and why that might or might not be a blessing now. We have to adjust with what's changing. What's changing might be our technology, might be our experience through thousands of years and so on. Yes. So our religion is accordingly of the age in which we are in, ideally, that will handle a better future as we see it, the best future that we see. And that is, the religion is made for man, not man for the religion. We are not here to conform to some past religion. We're here to have a religion that works for the best, an understanding that works for the best, hopes and beliefs and values that seem to work for the best. And by the best we mean the things that we all value: happiness, joy, fun, creativity, peace, hope, freedom from pain, you name it. Prosperity in however we're defining it now. Thank you, Heavenly Father.